Good afternoon. And thank you for coming. My name is Cliff Zukin. I'm the Vice President of AAPOR and the incoming President. I don't usually wear a suit, but Bob Groves has told me that I look lovely today. And so I'll take that as a compliment and go from there. It's a pleasure to be here. My enviable task, certainly not a job, is to introduce Nancy Belden. And this to me is a pleasure and an honor. I've long been a fan of Nancy's. She's one of my favorite people in AAPOR, and also one of the smartest people I think I've ever met in AAPOR. In fact, I once said when I finished being on the council 3 years ago that there were only 2 people that I served with in the 3 years I was there that I didn't hear something dumb come out of their mouth. I don't include myself in that group. And to each of the other 29 council people I served with, that other person is you. I've had a great year serving with Nancy. There she is. And I want to tell you a little bit, 2 things. One is, who is Nancy Belden? I know we have a lot of new people at AAPOR in the last few years. We love to see the new members. We love to see the growth. And we know that we can't just assume that you know who's who in the association. So I want to tell you a little bit about Nancy Belden and how she got to be the founder of Belden, Russinello, and Stewart, and also the president of AAPOR. And I want to tell you or share with you some stories I have about my year with Nancy Belden. It's no exaggeration to say that Nancy was born to be the president of AAPOR. Most of you probably don't know her father is Joe Belden, who was a founding member of AAPOR and was at the original conference that started AAPOR in the 1940s in Colorado. And Joe, who is now 90, was the originator of the Texas poll, which is the granddaddy of state polls. And so Nancy has a long heritage with AAPOR. Not that anything came easy to young Nancy. She grew up the youngest of 3 in the hard-scrabble Dust Bowl of Dallas, Texas. She worked on the poll during summers and worked for everything she had. When she was growing up in her formative years in Dallas, a pattern began to emerge. Once when she felt she was having to unfairly wait at the lunch table at Neiman Marcus, Nancy turned to her dad and said, "I have an idea." She went to a group of lunch diners who were lingering a little bit too long over their coffee and said, this is Nancy at 9, "Don't you think that muumuu looks really good on you, and you know it's on sale now?" Thereby clearing the table and giving them room to eat. This became a lesson in life for young Nancy, and she learned 3 things from this. One is that ideas are good. 2, she can be powerful. And 3, question wording is very important. There were other events that were important in growing up in Texas, and I wish I had a picture of Nancy in the Cotton Bowl Parade to show you. Her husband tells me it really happened. Nancy was a bit of a Southern belle growing up in Texas. I understand there's a picture of her in white gloves in the Cotton Bowl Parade that I don't have. But this is Nancy in Texas. From Texas, she went to Mary Washington College at the University of Virginia, graduated Georgetown with a master's degree in Latin American studies. And in fact, it's fair to say that she really considers herself a Latin Americanist, and that really is her first love. She's worked doing family planning in Mexico. She's lived in Mexico. And from there, she went to California, Sonoma, wine country, where she was active in Planned Parenthood, establishing the first Women's History Month in California, and also working for a bit in the California legislature. Then it was back to D.C., where my stories about Nancy actually start. First one I'm going to tell you is about the development of Belden, Russinello, and Stewart. After working for Peter Hart for a bit, Nancy went out on her own in about 1982 and formed Belden Opinion Research, It was during that she met John Rusnello, working on the Cranston campaign in California over 20 years ago. John doing speechwriting, communications, Nancy doing polling. They dated for a while, then they married in 1986. And then one day, John said, "I'd like to have a baby." And Nancy said, "Go ahead." Then she said, "I have an idea. Don't you think it would be easier for us to do this if you stopped during your company and came to work for me?" And that's how Belden Rusnello was born. Later, John was impressed with Kate Stewart, and John offered Kate a job. Kate said no. A little bit later, John offered Kate a job again, and Kate said no. Nancy said, "I have an idea. Kate, don't you think?" So she joined the firm in 1992, was made a partner in 1998, and then the most recent story that I love about Nancy, many of you know she's been building a villa in Umbria, in Italy, just outside Rome. And I tell this story because it's so typical Nancy that it'll really give you some insight into her personality. One day, in 2002, Nancy turned to John and said, "I have an idea. Don't you think it would be nice to have a house in Italy?" John sort of shrugged. He's quiet and sort of... Nancy spent 2 weeks on the internet tracing down property in Italy. She then narrowed it down to people. She made calls. She made from 20 to then 10 appointments. And then 2 months later, John found himself on a plane to Rome to look at property. Here's the house before Nancy did the renovations, and that's Nancy inside the house. I've learned that Nancy is persistent, focused, has extremely high standards, not just for people around her, which she does, but for herself too, and has great integrity. She's really been a privilege to work with. She also has a great sense of playfulness and humor, I'm hoping. I plan to test that in just a moment. The other person, though, I want to introduce you to in explaining Nancy Belden to you is the love of her life and the person who actually runs the household and often the office, and that's Crackers. I assume that's your son Gio too, right? Well, that's Crackers. All right, my year with Nancy Belden was really foreshadowed by a conversation I had with John Rusnello. And I said, "John, I'm so happy to be working with Nancy. I think it's really cool. Your wife is so talented and smart. She's strategic, she's funny, she's political." And John said, "No." He said, she's all that, she's more, but the main thing is that people can't say no to Nancy." And I thought, this is coming from her husband. And he's a tough guy. John Rusnello's from New Jersey, and he's saying he can't say no. So I sort of knew what I was in for, and I'm going to tell you 4 stories about my year with Nancy Belden that illustrate how hard it is to say no to Nancy. Was that a hurry up, Nancy? To get through it, or is it too long? Nancy and I went through a lot this year, and the first thing we went through was political polling this season. And God is angry too. We went through a lot of calls before the election. We went through a lot of dodging bullets and tight-roping after the election when he had the exit poll. One of the things Nancy had me doing was monitoring AAPOR.net. And I don't know if you know, but AAPOR.net is monitored. We have in our office 2 1,500-page volumes of AAPOR traffic. One volume is for 1,680 of our members, and the other volume is for the other 8. But we do take a look at it. And I remember once I called Nancy excitedly, and I said, "Nancy, I think Warren Matofsky's dead." And she said, well, how do you know? And I said, "Well, I was looking at the traffic." And Warren's a very consistent contributor to AAPOR. By the way, we not only code how many it comes in, but we also code the affect of the comment into positive, neutral, negatives, 95% intercoded reliability. It sort of works pretty well. And I said, I think he's dead. You know, no one's heard from him. And Nancy said, well, I have an idea. Maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's just bound, or maybe gagged somewhere, or both. And she said to me, it may be an attack on the profession, and we should take this seriously, Cliff. I said, well, that's silly. You're overreacting. She wasn't very happy with that. She said, I think you and Jennifer Rothgab, who's the Secretary of Treasury, incoming Secretary of Treasury, should go to a safe house. We should not be together. I've watched the Bush administration, Cliff. Trust me. I want you and Jennifer to go to Kansas. We were not enthusiastic about the idea. But again, Nancy can be very persuasive, and we said, okay, we're going to go. I don't know if you've ever seen Applied Management Professionals in Lenexa, Kansas. This is AMP's headquarters, where we go, and Nancy was actually very, very pleased that Jennifer and I were off to Lenexa, Kansas. And I'll show you where we stood. We lived for 2 months. I don't know if you know this is actually the AAPOR storage room in Lenexa, Kansas. You can see down in the lower left, there was under the 3 cartons. That's what Jennifer and I used for a desk. And we had our sleeping quarters up the stairs. So that was one thing where Nancy showed great vision in getting us out, and was very happy with the way that was resolved. And then I was also pleased that Nancy made me pretty much a full partner doing AAPOR's financials this year. Nancy was taking particular note of the declining value of the dollar against the euro while she was furnishing her house in Italy. And she was saying, well, you can't get as much, and I don't have as many trips, and so forth. And I remember she called one day and said, hey, Cliff, I have an idea. Don't you think it would make sense if we invested in some foreign real estate? And I said, I don't think so. I don't know much about this. And then, well, this slide appears to be misplaced. I do know that I signed a number of papers, and then it seemed to be okay again. Now, the vice president of AAPOR is supposed to do some common things. You do weddings and funerals. And again, Nancy filled me in on what vice presidents do from her experience in Washington. And Nancy said, well, I want to challenge you this year, and I want to challenge the association this year. I want to do more visible outreach. I want to have AAPOR be more visible. I want us to have a larger role in world affairs, and I want you to play a part in that process. And I remember the first time Nancy tried to merge these, and she asked me to attend the funeral of Yasser Arafat. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. Are you sure? And Nancy let me know that she had really thought it through, and that if I just thought about it a little bit more, I would get there. And she liked that, and then so I got there. But I did feel a little out of place. I did other funerals during the year. I did, and Nancy, you know, let me do some good ones. I did Johnny Carson. I did Johnny Cochran. And the one I really was dubious about doing but ended up having a lot of fun was Frank Perdue. He's also died this year. Then, of course, I did the big one in Rome. And I'm back there, same suit. And so anyway, when I was in Rome, Nancy called and said, I want you to stay in Rome. I have an idea. I'm coming over to talk with you about it. And we met in the AAPOR Villa in Umbria that everybody has a part ownership in, I'm happy to say. And Nancy said to me, has there ever been an AAPOR member who's been Pope? And I said, I don't know. I haven't really followed it that closely. She said, don't you think it would be more visible if one of us was Pope? We should think about this. And I said flippantly, go ahead. Didn't work that well. She said, they're not going to vote for a woman Pope, Cliff. Don't be stupid. Then she went to work on me, and she said, don't you like Italian food? Do you know that if we only can get 78 votes, we can do it? It's a tiny electorate. And then she looked at me and she said, don't you want to be infallible? Well, I have a wife and two 14-year-old girls, and it never occurred to me that I could be infallible. So I said, I'll do it. It's like that. It's like that. Was anybody else in the conclave? Swan? Well, most of you probably don't know what it's like, and that's Tom Smith. I don't remember seeing you, but everybody's so dressed up. In the back. I mean, yes, there are prayers and there are politics, but it's also a lot like a Miss America contest, which I didn't know, except that all the contestants are also judges. I did surprisingly well in the swimsuit competition. I lost to Tom, but there wasn't a lot of competition, and I actually even did okay in the evening wear. And I think we all enjoyed the dress-up and the posing. I did less well in the talent competition. I tried some jokes that Nancy Welchel had given me. I tried the one about the limerick about the priest from Nantucket, which did not go over well. Where I really screwed up, I know, is the interview, which is worth a lot of points. I thought I knocked them out of the box on the first answer I gave. I'm for world peace. But apparently, being a Z, that had been taken before me. And apparently I made a serious mistake with my second answer. The question was, how would you lead and grow the 1.1 billion Catholics worldwide? And I looked at him and I said, 1.1 billion? Haven't you people ever heard of sampling? It's not hard. Take the square root of P times Q, you divide by n minus 1. What's so hard about that? They looked at me like I was speaking Latin. It could have been a foreign language. But those are my four stories about serving with Nancy. The pictures to me are Happy Nancy and Stern Nancy. I've enjoyed them both, except I've never really seen the Stern Nancy. We had to take about 130 pictures to do that. She genuinely gets people to do things because she convinces them, rightfully so, that it's important to do. And because she herself has a great sense of calling to service and to the profession. And I have been very, very honored to serve with you. So I have an idea. Do you think you could put your hands together for AAPOR's daughter, my personal Pope, and your president, Nancy Belden? This is my computer. Do you need something else?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Oh, well, it's a hard act to follow. Thank you, Cliff, for at least warming up the crowd and for all those wise words and kindnesses. You've been a great collaborator, as have the rest of the council. It's been a really wonderful year. Much of what you're going to hear about at this conference, and you've already heard some of it, is about methods and about what we're learning as we move through time, about learning how to do research better and to do it well. But I'm not going to talk about methods and sampling error or total anything, total. I'm going to talk about something different, but I think equally as important, an equally as important aspect of our profession. There are a lot of you out there who don't know who I am, or at least you didn't until a few minutes ago. And that's to be expected because we're a very large group now. In fact, as I said to some of you yesterday, I was really surprised when I looked at the list of people who were coming to this conference, what really small percentage of them that I know personally. Because as has been referenced, I grew up in a polling firm. I feel like I've been coming to AAPOR since I was a tiny baby. So it sometimes surprises me that I don't know everybody here. Anyway, I want to say a great big welcome to everybody that are my old friends and my new friends, and I hope that my talk today will strike a chord with all of you. First, though, I really do need to thank some people who made my year as AAPOR president memorable. The volunteers who have done an enormous amount of things on different committees and a huge array of things we've been involved in. The council, again, who've been very helpful. And particularly to my staff, to the staff of the AAPOR staff, who just are wonderful, go get it done people. But especially, really especially to my partners, to Kate Stewart and to John Rusinello, who took up the slack this year and let me not do very much work while they concentrated on doing the work while I concentrated on AAPOR business. And particularly to John, without whom nothing would be possible. So thank you both. This was a big year for AAPOR. We did a lot of things. We clarified our code. We expanded our membership services. We began a long-range planning process. We responded to the election season, as you may remember, and we launched a new AAPOR initiative to educate policymakers, the press, and the public about the value of survey and public opinion research. In the past, we've concentrated on defending ourselves from criticism. And this year, we really began more to tell our own story. These efforts have been funded with seed money from the Annenberg School of Communication at the University of Pennsylvania and from the Pew Center for the People in the Press. And we're very thankful to that. This year, part of our new program also includes seminars for editors and reporters about reporting, polling, both understanding better how to judge polls that they are presented with for publication, and how to write better, in-depth, and interesting stories about polling. And we hope that there are many other parts of this program and communications that will come down the line. Thank you. I don't know if I was crying before or what, but allergies get me. We have a lot of these interesting initiatives started. I don't think we expect miracles, but we'd like to reach the point where we never hear another member of an appropriations committee exclaim, and I'm not making this up, quote, "We don't need a census. I have all the statistics I need right here in the statistical abstracts put out by the government." Our AAPOR initiatives have caused me to reflect on our profession and the power that comes with it. How we as individuals use that power and the important role that AAPOR can play as a friend and guide to all of us is what I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about today. My message can be summed up in three things, three assertions. First, what we do is a privilege. Public opinion and survey research is more than just a way to make a living, because it has so much impact on the lives of other people. Second, we have a responsibility, not just to do good work, not just to do it well, but to use our work to do good. And third, AAPOR is the organization in this country that can create a greater culture of responsibility in the public opinion field, because only AAPOR can be the big tent that welcomes all. And this means AAPOR must open its tent wider with a louder, more persuasive call to those not yet among us as members of AAPOR. Because consider my first point. Whether you're a sampling expert at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or you run a survey lab at a university, or you write marketing studies for corporations, or conduct strategic research for nonprofits and political organizations, you are privileged to hold in your hands the tools for understanding this dynamic and democratic phenomenon that we call public opinion. We hold the ability to understand the collective conscience of our town, our state, our nation. We fill in the whys and the wherefores that explain who we are as a public. We're the people who ask questions such as, why do people practice unsafe sex? And how can they be persuaded otherwise? How many children in the US or Canada or Mexico need immunization? How much confidence do consumers have in the economy? We even ask, why do Americans choose someone for president whose policies they oppose? The answers to our questions help us understand what we believe, what we need, and what we desire. Ultimately, our research records history, and it should help change society for the better. Indeed, some of our work saves lives. Our Policy Impact Award this year honors some of you who are helping to eliminate the horror of AIDS. Some of our work saves the quality of life. I'm very proud of the partners that I work with who've done work that led the people of Montana to stand up and say no to gold mines that dump cyanide into water supplies. And some of our work saves our humanity. Our AAPOR Book Award tomorrow night is going to 4 individuals who are helping us understand attitudes on race. And what could be more important than understanding race relations in this country? So many of you in this room are studying, or you're laboring in lots of different ways that are making a difference for people. As a member of the community of individuals who know how to ask questions and who are seeking to know more about how to conduct research effectively, what you discover, even in small bits, about sampling or analysis, or asking a single type of question that gets at the truth, be it sexual identity or preferences in refrigerators, or what kind of radio stations people listen to, or how people get to work. No matter, your work can contribute to this field and thus to society. And that leads me to my second assertion. With all this influence and power that we hold comes a responsibility to use our work for good. This means first, of course, to do good work, right? So we know we have to not cut corners, we have to write good questionnaires, we have to respect respondents. But our responsibility goes beyond just doing good work. We also have a responsibility not to cause harm. As public opinion researchers, we are armed with all these tools that we have, and so we're potentially dangerous. And we all know that our craft can be used in harmful ways. So let me assert something maybe a little bit radical, and maybe everyone won't agree with me. Because our work is a privilege and influential and potentially dangerous, our responsibility lies beyond simply following the rules. Our work must be considered in the light of our personal principles of right and wrong. I'm reminded of a story that my father tells of a poll he conducted in 1946. This was the early days of the Texas poll that was a syndicated column that ran in the papers in Texas. And Daddy had a crosstab that showed one candidate was receiving the lion's share of the black vote. Remember, this is 1946. He feared that publishing that crosstab would feed into the racism of the times. But on the other hand, he felt an obligation to report the factual findings of his poll. He brought this dilemma to the discussions of the first gathering of pollsters in Central City. the meeting in Central City, Colorado that led to the next year to the founding of AAPOR. And Jack Ellenson recalls that it was suggested at that meeting, as the members there assembled talked about this issue, they suggested that he publish the crosstab, but not until after the election. Under the journalistic code today, the decision to publish might just be the norm, to move right ahead and publish. But those were different times. And my point in telling the story is not to say that we should self-censor published polls, or even to come down on one side or the other of the question. My point is that regardless of what he decided, my father knew the power that he held in his hands. It wasn't a client or a contract that motivated his decision. It was his sense of right and wrong. I'm proud of the fact that my father was able to bring this moral, professional dilemma to the first gathering of people at Central City. He wasn't embarrassed by the fact that he didn't really know quite what to do, which way to turn. The point is that the first Central City meeting sat as a group of colleagues and they considered the moral implications of their work. As in 1946, we have a responsibility to consult not just our careers, but also our consciences before we craft a poll, before we use our craft and our abilities and our tools to push a product, a political party, or a published piece. Before we advocate for a candidate or a corporation or a think tank's position, before we support an industry, interest group, or a government decision. No matter what we do, we have a responsibility to weigh the consequences of our work, to apply our conscience to our work. I might ask myself, does my work contribute to the greater understanding, or does it confuse and distract? Does it help sell products or policies that I believe are harmful? Does my work serve truth-telling? Like my father's dilemma, not all the choices that we make are clear-cut, and each of us can see the merits of a decision differently. We talk a lot in this organization about the AAPOR code. What I'm saying is we must weigh the potential outcomes and apply our own individual moral code also to the decisions we make in pursuing, accepting, designing, delivering surveys, focus groups, or other research. So again, I ask each of you, do not just do good work, but use your power to do good. And this leads me to my third assertion. AAPOR, it needs to take the leadership in creating a culture of responsibility in the survey and public opinion field. The AAPOR created by our mothers and fathers occupies a distinct place that really is not filled by any other organization. We will admit anybody who subscribes to the code. There's not a test to take, there's no bar to jump over. Instead, AAPOR is this collection of individuals who self-select to be members. It's both multidisciplinary and it's non-discipline specific. AAPOR is the only place where all individuals involved in any aspect of public and opinion research come together and exchange ideas, debate issues, discuss challenges. You know, there's the Market Research Association, there's CASRO, there's the stats people, there are the field directors group, there's the Advertising Research Foundation, the list goes on. These are great organizations. They serve other segments of our industry and they serve them well. But AAPOR is really the only place that brings us all together. AAPOR has the potential to be truly representative of this research world. But I say potential because we're not adequately representative today. And that needs to change. Only by expanding our tent can AAPOR influence the field and create a widely shared culture of responsibility among pollsters. Only through an aggressive program of outreach to attract researchers who are not now under our tent can we remain vital. Now, some of you, I know, have lamented the fact that AAPOR has already grown so much, and that it's so different than it was just a few years ago. We have somewhere around 2,000 members probably, and we have somewhere around 1,000 people at this meeting alone. I too want to hang on to that sense of community that we felt over the years as members of AAPOR. I want to preserve that. But frankly, we're going to have to find ways to preserve that sense of community within a much larger entity. Because unless we expand the tent, those that are left under it are going to find the world passing us by. Whether we like it or not, this field is open to anybody. You can think of it like language. You know, anybody can learn to speak. Let's say you learn Spanish. You learn the diphthong, and you can do the subjunctive, and you're very good at it, very fluent. But that doesn't mean you can speak French or Arabic or Cantonese. You use the same tools, breath and vocal cords and mouth, and lips. But the languages that we all use them for are really very different one from the next. And our research tools, similarly, are pretty similar. They're sampling and people to do interviewing and questions and questionnaires and computers and software to crunch the numbers, people that are out there doing interviewing. But our uses are wildly different one from the next. And so is our training and background. Just diversity is a very good thing. It produces polls that are innovative, timely, sometimes, as I've said, help save lives and help us better understand who we are as a society. But along with the good come the bad and the ugly. And as I've said, anybody basically can hang out a shingle. Some people act responsibly and wisely using those tools that we have, and some don't. Not everyone who has letterhead that says pollster or focus group leader or survey researcher does it well. We can't prevent people from using those tools of the trade, even if they don't know how to use them well or don't want to use them well, any more than you can prevent me from speaking Italian poorly. I think we have to embrace the fact that we don't own public opinion and survey research, and no branch of research or institution owns it or ever will. No more than anybody owns Spanish or Italian, or for that matter, nobody owns journalism or pastry baking. If in the end what we do is a form of free speech, and we're all free to exercise it. So from the tabloids' measure of how people feel about alien invasions from Mars, to the professor whose class made up the interviews in a survey that was introduced in the Scott Peterson murder trial in the change of venue with a falsified survey. There are plenty of blemishes on the polling industry. AAPOR must never abandon its dedication to promote best practices or to bring standards cases against wrongdoers. In fact, AAPOR procedures are among the few serious avenues for confronting purveyors of bad polling. But our procedures are often inadequate. We don't get to the scene of the crime in time. We don't have the resources to investigate. We don't have the resources to apply our standards across all the places that they might be needed. We don't have enough whistles and nightsticks to police every poll, nor should we embark on some divisive attempts to act like the poll police. There's a better way to promote best practices. AAPOR serves research best not by being a senior society that meets to set down rules to judge others, but rather as an open society that welcomes the sinners as well as the saints. Because when we can't welcome them all to our association, the sinners may get religion, and the saints probably have all sinned at some point. The problem is that as open as we are, and as available as membership in our association is, AAPOR really doesn't attract people from a lot of different practitioner groups, or from all of them. And this lack of diversity matters because the variety of our membership is what really allows us to learn from each other and to meet our responsibilities to do our best work, to stretch our thinking and consider new ideas and methods, and even to weigh the consequences of our work. We need each other in ways that we're not even fully aware of probably most of the time. Private sector practitioners need the thoughtful findings of scholarly work. Scholars can learn much from private practitioners about the real applications of their work. The media pollsters learn from both of these groups and then take what they need and do more than most of us ever could to communicate our craft to the public. And this mix of experiences and pressures is already a large part of the magic of AAPOR. To the extent that we allow other sectors of the opinion research industry to go without this experience, as long as they remain outside our tent, they and we are included here, are not served well. If we're to have a positive impact on the profession, we must have a membership that reflects all who are practicing. So let me close by going back to the beginning. When the founders of AAPOR met in Central City, Colorado in 1946, the group assembled included George Gallup and others, including, I'm proud to say, as we've said, my father, Joe Belden. They met and they discussed everything. They talked about how to pull a sample at all, how to ask the marital question. They talked about how much to pay interviewers, and we're told that Dr. Gallup revealed that he paid the least of all. It was a really small group of people, but they had big ideas and they had big, big questions. But everybody was welcome. It was open. It was open to everybody. Nearly 60 years later, we inherit the wisdom and work ethic of those who've come before us. Every day, we stand on the foundation that was built by others, and we benefit from the thousands of panels and debates and shouting matches that have occurred in the dozens of AAPOR meetings across the country over the years. Each one of us can carry AAPOR into the future by helping to pitch this bigger tent. I urge all of you to help create a stronger, more diverse AAPOR. Reach out to new members, bring them in. Like Noah, we need to seek out pairs of species who are not yet on our ark and under our roof. To the academics, my message is, we need you. To those of you working in government and media research, we need you. To those of you in marketing, research, and political polling, and everybody else who might be doing things a little bit differently, we need you too. Because AAPOR is the place to air differences and to give new ideas a chance to breathe. My hope is for all of us to come back next year and the years after that and find that AAPOR's tent is a little bit bigger, that AAPOR's membership is a little bit more diverse, and AAPOR's voice is saying to all who do this work, there is a meeting place for all of you. Thank you.